Hi, this is a video lesson for a new sheet called 8th, 16th hi-hat patterns. That refers to the 8th notes and 16th notes that you're playing in the hi-hat pattern. And the sheet is a bunch of beats that are using those hi-hat patterns. So the hi-hat patterns are 1 E and 1 and a, which we've seen before, and we talk about them as coconut and strawberry. They are comprised of an 8th note and 2 16th notes, and in either order. 2 16ths and an 8th, 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and 1 8th and 2 16ths. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Another way to remember them is coconut, 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 strawberry, 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 strawberry. The way they're written out in notation can be a little bit confusing because on the coconut, there's a space between the 2 16ths and the 8th. That space is only seen, it's not actually heard. The 16th notes lead right into the 8th note. 1 E and 2 E and. So that's why sometimes thinking coconut and strawberry, associating those notation things with that sound, can help you remember how it sounds. The beats themselves in section A and section B are very standard patterns that we've played before. And I'm going to play them now using a straight 8th note hi-hat pattern, which is something that we pretty much do all the time. The first beat pattern is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Easy enough. The second beat pattern is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The third pattern, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The hands are the same for each pattern. It's the bass drum that changes. So section A is the coconut section, 1 E and 2 E and I'm going to play through what's written on the page there, each line twice. You'll see the repeat signs on each line. One thing to think about when you're playing these kind of patterns on the hi-hat that require faster notes, finger technique is everything. So using your fingers to pull the stick into the hi-hat. One thing that I'm finding is something that things people forget about using finger technique is your finger technique is only useful when it has a job to do. If you don't begin your drum stroke with the stick coming up, like the wind up, then your fingers don't have anything to pull down. So if you're here and I say to you, use your fingers, well, nothing's going to happen. And then what ends up happening is people either just dip the stick or they release the fingers, trying to use some kind of finger technique. But they're missing the piece of stick comes up, fingers pull down. So that's where the wrist comes into play. The wrist can bring the stick up, the wrist and the thumb, but some people can't bend their thumb the way I can, so I have to remember that. So the wrist can take you can do it if you have the hyper flexible thumb like I do, or you can do it with the wrist. The wrist comes up and the fingers pull the stick down. I'm showing it with my left hand because in my right hand you can't see my fingers. So when you're thinking about that, 1 E and 2 E and, you want that upstroke so you can pull it down with the fingers. Here's section A. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E. Next line, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E. Next line, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. There you go. Section B, same beat patterns, but using the 1 E and hi-hat pattern, strawberry. it changes the relationship on, basically, you know, when the bass drum will change how it's relating to your hand, depending on the pattern you're playing. And that's where you might get tripped up. That if you're going to play on the second one, 3 and you have to play 3 and together, and then add 3 and add that extra 16th note. Limb independence is what we're always talking about. So here we go. Section B. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and, oh, I just played the third line instead of the second line of B. I'm going to start over. I always leave the mistakes in the videos because I don't ever want you to think that I play anything perfectly. I want to play musically and I want to play creatively. That's what's important. Perfection, it's never worth it. So you can always start again, especially in a practice room, in a lesson, in a studio situation like this. Just start again. That's what I'm going to do. Letter B. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E, 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and E and 2 E and 3 E and E and There you go. Now, C and D, things get a little more complicated because we're going to add 16th notes in the bass drum. In the first line of C and the first line of D, we're adding 1 E and A and 3 E and A to the basic pattern. So the bass and snare drum sounds 1 E and A, 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and which means with the coconut, the bass drum is going to fall after the coconut. And you'll see on counts 1 and 3 on the first line of C, the notation looks different. Instead of it being 2 16ths and an 8th in the hi-hat, you get 3 16ths and a 16th note in the bass drum. It doesn't change the sound of the hi-hat. You're still playing 1 E and, but to accommodate the ah in the bass drum in this notation, that and count gets shown as a 16th note because the second half of it is filled by the bass drum. 1 E and ah. So the sound is still the same as 2 16ths and an 8th, but now you have the bass drum filling that space. The second line of C, we're adding the bass drum on 2 E, and that, as you'll see, doesn't affect the notation of the hand, but the bass drum comes 2 E and comes there, and 2 E and 4 E. So here we go, section C, twice each line. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. Okay? Section D, same bass and snare patterns as C, but now with the other hi-hat pattern, 1 E and strawberry. And you'll notice in the second line of D, on counts 2 and 4, we get the same change in the notation, where the first 8th note of the hi-hat pattern is shown as a 16th note, as is the snare drum, because the space after it, the E count, is where the bass drum is, and it needs to occupy that 16th note space on count 2 and on count 4. So the notation changes, but the sound and the playing do not. Excuse me. Here we go. Section D. 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4E and Okay, practice all of this, going slowly, counting out loud, being mindful of good technique, especially on the hi-hat for this, because if you want to start speeding these up, you're going to need your fingers. I need my fingers to do that. If I'm trying to do it with my arm, I'll probably fly away. So much flapping. An extension of how to keep working on this is you can mix and match the patterns. It's common to hear these hi-hat patterns used not continuously, but as an embellishment. So for example, you could play, say, section A, second line, and do the first two counts as just plain eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and something like that, where you can mix and match with a simpler pattern and a more complicated pattern. Creates a lot of interest. You can mix both together. I'm going to play the first line of A and B mixed together. So I'm going to play the counts 1 and 2 from B and counts 3 and 4 from A. And what you'll hear is in the middle of the bar, 2E and 3E and. You get this run of 4 16th notes on the hi-hat. So first two counts of B, third and fourth counts of A. 1 and 2 and 3E and 4E and. 1 and 2 and 3E and 4E and. So that can be a really cool sound. And then you can use the more complicated bass drum patterns too. Same idea. I'm going to use the last line of D, first two counts, and the first line of C, counts 3 and 4. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and. So there I mixed the E count on the bass drum and then the ah count in the second half of the bar. You can mix and match, get really creative with it. Have a good time with it. I'll see you in a lesson. Bye.